Stu MacKenzie of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizzard. Hi Stu, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
What was the last music? What was the last music you've been listening to on a purpose?
Last thing I was listening to, I was actually listening to Erkan Koray, who's like a Turkish kind of 70s sort of psychedelic music pioneer, but kind of did a lot of Turkish music as well. And he died a few days ago, so sort of listening to him, I was rethinking about him because of that.
How did you find out this music? It's not very
Originally?
usual.
When I was like a teenager in Melbourne, it was kind of music that people would put on at parties and stuff, and like kind of like have drinks to and smoke to and stuff. It's kind of amazing, freaky, psychedelic music. So it was maybe unusually something that I did grow up with. Yeah.
That was my question. What was the kind of music you grew up with? So it was this kind of music or more like a
that
rock?
That was kind of, when I was a teenager, it was sort of like that. Yeah, when I was younger, I mean, I suppose it, you know, as everyone is, it's like their parents' music, which was a lot of kind of rock and roll, I suppose, but a lot of kind of country and folk and that sort of thing too. A lot of Australian music and probably, yeah, a lot of American music too. And then when I got a little older and started kind of getting into music for myself, it was pretty rock based, and it was kind of like stuff like AC/DC and heavy rock and that sort of thing. And then it's sort of, I got into heavy metal and all that sort of thing when I was maybe later or mid-teen years, I suppose. And then after that, it was all about kind of obscure psychedelic rock and kind of freaky stuff from all over the world, which was what I was into when I was in my later teens and early 20s and that sort of thing. Early iteration of Gizzard, that sort of stuff.
Not only AC/DC, Australia had many fabulous bands in the last 50 years, also In Excess and also Tame Impala, of course. Yourself, is any of them your inspiration, like main inspiration?
AC/DC were up there, and I think like important for me on a personal level. For instance, my dad played guitar, and he always played guitar. There was always guitars in the house, but it was sort of like acoustic guitar, and he would kind of sing sort of folk songs and stuff, and I think because I was a kid, I just thought that was like boring and like stupid or something. I thought just guitar was lame, like, you know, every kid's like that a little bit. But then when I saw Angus Young playing on the TV, I was like, oh, okay, guitar's cool. Dad, can I please play guitar? And so then it was kind of from there. So yeah, AC/DC were kind of pivotal in that way, and so omnipresent in Australia. You know, it's so much of what the foundation of so much rock music in Australia is built out of, like specifically that band and what they kind of did. So yeah.
I read that your dad was a left-handed player, so first you learned guitar to play upside down. Is it correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there was only left-handed guitars in the house. So, I mean, this was kind of in the way of just picking it up and having to fiddle around with it and trying to make a sound out of the strings and that sort of thing. But I haven't picked up a left-handed guitar in quite a while, but I did used to say I could play one because, you know, they always were around. I don't know.
But it's similar to Jimi Hendrix or Kurt Cobain. They both play, also play the guitar. Was it hard for you to relearn it, or do you still play upside down?
I did think about that, you know, like when I first started getting like guitar lessons, it was a conscious decision because I actually wanted to just keep playing upside down. And Dad was like, it's actually really annoying being a left-handed guitarist. Dad was like, it's so annoying. It's so hard to get guitars. Left-handed guitars are just don't. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Just go and swap now. And I was like, okay, I'll swap back to regular right-handed. Because I'm right-handed, so
yeah.
I don't know, made sense, but yeah.
What was the first song you learned to play guitar? Something from AC/DC?
Oh, first song on guitar. I mean, it was probably, okay. So I remember learning the chords to All Along the Watchtower.
Oh, yeah.
I remember learning the riff to Come As You Are.
Oh, yeah.
I remember learning. I think it's a bass guitar riff, but the intro of Bomb Track by Rage Against the Machine. What else was early? Yeah, exactly, that one. Like Hey Joe, stuff like that. I can't remember what was first, but it was they're my memories of, you know, the first little round of guitar lessons and that sort of thing.
As far as I know, you use custom built guitars, so plain electric guitars doesn't fit your needs.
We have some custom built guitars. The only custom built guitar that I play is a microtonal one, and it's just got some extra frets to play some extra notes in there. But apart from that, I've just got the other. I've got 3 guitars on this tour. The other 2, one's a old Japanese Yamaha, it's a 60s Flying Samurai is what it's called, and I have a Gibson Explorer, which has holes in it. It's kind of weird looking, but works for me.
You often experiment with microtonality in your music. How it happened? What do you find interesting about it?
Yeah, I think like again, kind of going back to the Turkish music thing. That was a link. It was sort of just a light bulb moment of realizing that there actually are extra notes and that there are an infinite amount of notes. And I'd grown up in this way of thinking where only the 12 notes exist, and isn't that so limiting? And so it sort of became a bit of a challenge to figure out how to actually, I suppose, play with other people with, you know, those sounds and that sort of thing. So it just was a coincidental moment where someone approached me and asked if was interested in them building a guitar for me. And so I said, yeah, sure, I got this idea, let's do a microtonal, add some extra frets in there. So that was the Flying Microtonal Banana, which kind of inspired that record originally. And yeah, since then, we've kind of done a few more experiments, and we've got some tuned harmonicas and a bass guitar. We've done a couple of bass guitars now and heaps of electric guitars, acoustic guitar, just to be able to play those sounds together. You know, it's no use if only one of us can do it. We sort of all have to be able to hit all those extra notes so we can play in tune with each other. So yeah, not all of our music's like that. Only really a small amount of our music is like that. But it's a super kind of fun, creative way of like looking at the world of music.
Not only microtonality, you also write songs with very unusual rhythms like 7/8 and 4/5 and so on. So everything unusual works for you. This is what you're trying to do, something that not everybody else is doing?
Not really, to be honest. I just think just trying to be open-minded, honestly. And I haven't really been that interested in doing what you're supposed to do. We're just doing what feels right to us. And I don't think we're deliberately trying to be weird or trying to challenge people. I just think that's what we've been interested in. And if people think that's unusual, that's cool, but it's an accident. You know, like we're just kind of following our little path.
There is lots of 16th, 17th rock influences in your music. In that era, everything was recorded on analog tapes and so on, the old way, old-fashioned. Do you work this way?
Yeah, mostly. But also, every record we've done, the kind of writing process has been... Oh, cheers to the bass.
Oh, shit. Something started probably on the orange stage.
It's God.
God is speaking.
Question. What was the question again?
60s, 70s analog tape.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. For us, the process has been part of the creative thing. So the way it's recorded, what we use, what the studio's set up like, how much rehearsal we have, whether we're improvising or whether we've got our songs locked in, whether we're recording digitally or to tape, or whether we're recording to a 2-track or a 16-track machine or whatever. It's always influenced the music. And so it's been super fun to experiment with different ways of recording, and much of the time it involves using tape, but not every time. And we've done it in a lot of different variations. We've mixed records down to VHS tape. Yeah. We've used cassette tapes. We've used, half-inch tape and quarter-inch tape and 1-inch tape and all sorts of stuff. And it's just been just an experiment that isn't designed to come up with the best way or anything. It's just an experiment to prompt creativity. You know, if it's going to sound like this, it will change the way we write. So yeah, heaps of tape, but not always as well. I'm not like a purist in any way. If it sounds good, it sounds good.
But there's also a record, Butterfly 3000, which is almost synth pop. It's psychedelic. It's not pure synth pop, but it's a very, very synthetic album. What is the idea behind this album? To throw every guitar out and just turn on synths, or?
Well, in Melbourne, we were in, I believe we're in the longest lockdown in the world during the pandemic, and we'd already made 2 records in lockdown. With those 2, KG and LW, which preceded Butterfly, we deliberately tried to make records that didn't sound like we were in lockdown, because that was the challenge. It was like, can we make records where we still sound like a band? You know, and that was a tough challenge, because we was kind of sending tracks backward and forward to each other, and it was a bit of a modus operandi of the record. But when we came to Butterfly, we flipped it on its head, and it was like, let's just throw that out the window. Let's not even worry about it sounding like us. Let's just do what makes sense while we're not in the same room. We can't be in the same room. And that's sort of, we worked on a grid, you know, in terms of the recording. It was all, which we don't usually do. So it was all click tracks and that sort of thing, and synthesizers and all those things that kind of like are trickier when you're in person and trying to jam, essentially. But we did kind of stuff that's like a bit more fiddly and a bit, you know, more techie and stuff. And I suppose we wanted to see what would happen if we were just open to that. So yeah, I suppose it kind of sounds like us still, but there are still some guitars, but it wasn't really the focal point or anything. It's mostly the synthesizers are the kind of the focal point of the album.
You released 24 albums in 11 years, which is quite a lot. So how many tracks you write in a month? And
it depends. It depends. And I've said this a few times, that it still usually takes us a couple of years to make a record. It's very rare that something will come from beginning to end in any less than 2 years. I just think we usually have a few projects on the go at the same time. So I don't know, maybe that's really the only thing that's much different with our process than other artists. And just like any other artist, sometimes we have flurries of writing, and there are periods of time where we're writing a lot, and other times there are periods of time where we're not writing much at all. But we do usually have something, or usually a few projects kind of happening at the same time. Some projects we do, if we're talking about how many songs do we write, don't really require writing. For instance, with Ice Death, the record we released last year, we deliberately went in without material, and we kind of recorded everything and pieced everything together in post. So that wasn't really a process of like writing songs in a traditional sense. It was a process of improvising, capturing everything, editing it down into what feels like songs, and then kind of building that bass up with overdubs and stuff until it feels like you got something interesting, and hopefully something that you wouldn't have made had you come in prepared. So it depends is the answer, yeah.
I was always a huge fan of Australian music. I always felt like it has something from both American and English. It's like the American feel-good factor and the British, I don't know, sophistication, but not that stiff. So what do you think about it? What do you think about Australian music in general? What is it typical?
I mean, sometimes it's hard to see the forest from the trees. I mean, being in it, it's hard to say, but... And, you know, it's also still very multifaceted. I mean, it's very hard to kind of break down the whole country's kind of musical identity into a small amount of words. And I also, you know, don't interact with huge sections of it too, and what we do. But in terms of like the rock community, I suppose, or what I feel like we've kind of come from, it's always been pretty accepted to do rock music in Australia. I think there's something to be said for that. We have a long history of rock bands, you know, and guitar music, and loud music and live music and that sort of thing, and it feels like you just right in the middle of the stream when you're doing that in a nice way. You're just kind of part of this long history and lineage of bands who are that just feels right to do that. But we are also isolated, so fucking isolated, in the middle of nowhere, in the ocean out on the other side of the world. And it feels like we do have to travel very far distances to get on tour. And it's very hard to tour like you can in Europe or in the US. In Australia, it's impossible. You can play 5-6 shows and then you're kind of done. You reach the end of the line. So we sort of do have this specific personality, I think, about Australian musicians, because I mean, most people that I know and my friends who are still doing it, there's a sense that you have to get out and you have to kind of just go tour elsewhere. You got to just go work, and that's, I don't know, it's different to other places. There are other places like that too, but most Australians are like that. If you're a musician, you got to figure out how to get out of Australia. It's kind of sad, but I think that little incubator within Australia is really important too, because we have our own little safety zone down there, and you can learn and develop and grow and play shows and figure out what you are before you get out of there, which is mostly what happens. Yeah.
You are from Melbourne. Is there any kind of music rivalry between Melbourne and Sydney scene, or do you cooperate?
I think any rivalry that is there is pretty superficial, to be honest. I have plenty of Sydney friends. I don't know, like, maybe it's a generational thing. You know, when I was growing up, older people kind of hated Sydney for reasons I don't really understand. Sydney's cool. Like, Sydney's sick. Melbourne's sick as well. I don't know. It's pretty different cities, honestly. Pretty different personalities and vibe and stuff, but I like Sydney.
How many guitars do you have? Do you have any which is really, really precious and special for you?
Do you know what? Like, I'm not like an overly sentimental person. Like, I don't have a lot of things. I don't like collect things. I don't even collect, like, you know, people collect these like tour lanyards and shit. I'd throw them in a bin. I don't know. I'm not that sentimental, but I do have quite a few guitars. It's maybe one thing where I do feel a little bit sentimental about things. I might have 20, maybe, something like that. It's probably too many. I do feel guilty when I own a guitar that doesn't get played very much, and I got a few of them at the moment, so might have to pass them along to someone.
Besides microtonality, is any of your guitars universal? You can play anything on it, on the records?
What do you mean?
Is any of your guitars so universal that you can play anything on it?
Yeah. Only the microtonal ones are like specific, really. And I only have my main microtonal guitar and an acoustic, which have been modified. They're my only microtonal guitars, and the rest are just regular acoustics, electrics, and a couple of 12 strings and that sort of thing.
There's also lots of genres in your music, from folk and jazz and I don't know, synth pop. How it happened? So you can decide which way to go. You like everything, so you put everything on the record. Yeah, I mean, again, like, not something that I think we've spent a lot of time thinking about. I think it's just reflective of our record collections. You know, I don't know. Like, I mean, most people would listen to more than one genre of music. I mean, I think as a musician, I sort of feel like I can play other types of music if I want to as well. You know, if I want to listen to different kinds of music, can I play different types of music? I don't know. That's always been my take on that, you know. Yeah.
It's just reflective of the music that we listen to, and what we're having fun doing and what inspires us and that sort of thing. Really, I kind of think it's simple in that way. Yeah.
And if you have to decide which music you will listen, new one or the old one right now?
Like our older music or our?
No. In general, like just to listen, to enjoy music. Would it be something new or something old?
How old is old?
I don't know, 60 years maybe.
6 years. Yeah, usually old. If we're only talking 6 years, I don't always keep up with new music that well. Probably because we're always making it. Yeah, I think I used to listen to more music, actually. when we're recording and writing, I often don't listen to any other music because I'm just so consumed by like what we're doing, which is kind of weird. It's kind of a weird thing. It's like when I take a rest or when I'm off, either recording or on the road or whatever, I listen to a lot of music because I feel like it's a nice yin yang thing. I always want to put on music. I always want to listen to music all the time, but like when we're on the road, I don't always listen to music because it's just fucking always in it, you know. Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the interview. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Jestli se vám pořad On Air líbí, dejte like a odebírejte YouTube kanál kytary.cz.